At that stage, 30 years ago, we still had enough of the older generation. Now we lost them all. They had enough of the older generation who remembered their grandparents, because they're the ones that were the first or second generation who came to Australia. So we could actually compile something like 6,000 descendants and stories on most of those early people.
Wow. Wow. Just the want to do that is impressive, right? Like the actual want from yourself and the community to actually want to do that is truly remarkable. Welcome everyone to another Wine Animal YouTube episode and podcast. I am extremely excited for what's about to come. I've spent the morning out here in the Eden Valley with Stephen and Prue and Justine, who you won't see because she's hiding behind the camera or to the side of the camera today. I've even got my own booklet here prepared with my name spelt correctly, which a lot of people do not do. They don't spell my name correctly, which is very important to me. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce you all to someone who you probably all know anyway. Stephen Henschke, fifth generation.
I'm fifth generation.
Fifth generation winemaker. Please tell us about yourself and your history.
Right, well I guess our family history is based on the Prussian king Friedrich Wilhelm III, who was persecuting the Lutherans. It was perfect timing because George V Angus in England was looking at developing South Australia as a new settlement for people to come to. And so one of the pastors who was living in Berlin, Pastor Carvel, heard about this. He was worried about his flock being persecuted, so he literally went to England to meet up with George V Angus and to see whether he could help. Angus couldn't speak German, he couldn't speak English, and between them they arranged for thousands of families to come to South Australia. It's just an amazing story. So our family is one of them. So Johann Christian Henschke and his family and his brother Johann Martin Henschke came out together on the ship. Sadly, Johann Christian lost his wife and a couple of kids on the trip out, so it was pretty tragic. But he married and had more kids as you do. And so then he initially went up into the Adelaide Hills to help found another village, which became Lobethal. And Lobethal is a valley village built in the Hoofendorf style of the houses along the sort of street, and the watercourse nearby, and narrow strips of land for farming behind. So he lived there, got married again, and then decided to move up to Krondorf. And Krondorf means Crown Village. It's near Bethany in the Barossa, where his brother Martin, Johann Martin, was living and his family. And then he bought land here in the North Rhine, as it's called, along the North Rhine River, and land over where the church is, which is at Parrot Hill. And then he started planting vineyard, built a cottage, and the family literally lived here. And I'm the fifth generation to have been born here and live here on the property.
And raise your children here.
In Eden Valley, and raise my children.
And grandchildren.
Our children. And grandchildren, absolutely. So
we've got the picture here, which I'm sure a lot of people have actually seen this photo of the family.
Yeah.
And you can tell that they're all from the same family. Like there's definitely.
How can you see that?
You can see the brothers and the sisters. You can actually see it all.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful spot too. It's at the front of what is the new cellar door. Now we've had a wonderful tour. We went out to the vineyards this morning. We've been through the winery this morning. We've tasted wines in the vineyards, which is fantastic. We've seen some not so nice stuff, some frost damage, and some, what was that other disease called? Utipa, we saw that as well. We learnt all about that. So that all is
known
coming.
as dead arm disease.
Dead arm disease?
Dead arm disease,
Okay.
Utipalata.
We
It's
definitely don't
also
want that.
gummosis in apricot, so it's the same fungus.
Okay, so we don't want that. We definitely don't want that. But in terms of you and Pru, obviously, you've put a lot of effort into not just the winery and where we are now, but into the vineyard, and that I found that to be really evident. So what was the push towards, has that always been, say with your father, your grandfather, more emphasis in the vineyard than in the winery, or do you think that's been a shift with your generation and Pru
No,
yourself?
I think there was always a significant emphasis in the vineyard, because I think early on, very early on, if you go back generations, they would have learnt quite quickly that the fruit quality is the most important thing for wine. I mean, it wasn't the same level now. There wasn't a Brendan Robnick going around talking to them about the wine they were making. I mean, it was, they were fermenting everything. They were fermenting their meats, their breads, their kuchens, their vegetables. So fermentation was something they knew because it was preserving the product. So they preserved their beautiful fruit as wine. And that sort of continued on, but they were clever. I mean, they knew which parts of the vineyard made better fruit and which varieties worked well. So I think that influence that I had. I mean, I grew up very, very much on the farm with my grandpa. We'd go out in the horse and buggy to bring the sheep in for shearing. He loved working in the cellar, so he'd be always at the crusher while the grapes were coming in. So I think as a kid I grew up immersed in all of that. And then our fermentation system, those open submerged cap fermenters, you could just climb up onto them and dip your finger in and taste the wines that were fermenting, which my daughter Justine did when she was little as well. And it's just a natural part of your life. Mm-hmm. It was very much a farm winery. And I think when Pru and I met at university, she's a botanist, zoologist. We decided we would get married, and we were actually invited by the professor from Geisenheim Wine Institute in Germany to come and study with him. So we went to Germany, and we lived in Germany for 2 years and studied winemaking and viticulture over there.
So you didn't study at Roseworthy like every other Australian winemaker seems to have studied that I hear from? No.
And I'm glad we didn't, because for us it was an absolute paradigm shift. Mm-hmm. We learnt different things about how people approach their viticulture, and the viticulture actually was probably for us both the most amazing learning experience there, because that had phylloxera through, that evil little aphid. And they were breeding grape varieties to produce, and they had to graft onto American rootstocks, but they're breeding grape varieties to give them new, exciting varieties to make, wines much more fun and more interesting. And so there were varieties like Müller-Thurgau and a whole range of Cariner, Ehrenfelser, all sorts of amazing aromatic flavoured wines that were very attractive. And we learnt a lot, but we also learnt about ampelography, which is variety definition. So the Riesling grape variety, when it's growing, looks nothing like a Shiraz, so you can tell them quite easily by looking at them. So you learn all about that. They're all about vine breeding. So Pru actually worked with Professor Helmut Becker in his institute and studied breeding, propagation, grafting, all those techniques. So it was a paradigm shift for us. It was just seeing everything from a different angle. So coming back was really quite interesting, because we then arrived back here to me to help my father in the winery, and we realised we knew nothing about our dirt. We knew nothing about our soils. So the first thing we did is we got a backhoe and we dug soil pits in all the vineyards, and Pru jumped in them, and she looked at the soil profile, measured the pH, and actually we have a sketch in here of the different soil profiles of each of the vineyards. So that's Pru's work, there's her artistry.
Oh, yeah.
tidied up slightly by a graphic designer. But you know, those sort of learnings are really important for us because we've got to understand what our soil was doing. And then she focused very much on the vines, you know, how they grow, how they use sunlight to make better quality. So from then on, she started doing a lot of work with different trellis designs to give better exposure, to get better colour and flavour. Where at the same time, the commercial side of the wine industry was going to mechanisation, machine pruning, machine harvesting. We were the opposite. We were going to fine tune to get the best quality Hill of Grace, the best quality Mount Edelson, the best quality Cainton we could possibly get by better exposure, by turning the volume control in the way we manage the vineyard.
Because the leaves are the solar panels that produce
the leaves
flavour.
Solar panels that produce colour and flavour.
I remember that one. That's staying with me. That's staying with me, that one.
And then because of our heritage and our future, we were aware that, you know, our kids needed to have a healthy environment to grow their grapes in. There was a land care project happening here in South Australia, which is a government and private sort of enterprise together funded to work out how to overcome issues. And one of them was there was too much clearing. We needed to plant trees to stop salinity rise in the paddocks so the farmland is more productive. And those were really great learnings because we then realised that we had to propagate plants, so improved botany background, really focused on propagation. We've planted thousands of trees along the creek lines, the hilltops. And in the vineyard, she's brought then native flowering plants, Bacera spinosa, which is known as the Christmas bush, Lamandra, which is the iron grass. She's brought them into the vineyard to provide a source of insects within the vineyard that would then control pests and diseases in the vineyard. So it was a totally different way of thinking, and I don't think it would have happened if we'd studied at Roseworthy, with all due respect. I think by studying internationally, it opened our eyes up to so many more possibilities. And we lived in a country that, you know, they grew their grapes up on big tall trellises. So we were inspired by what they were doing in terms of making beautiful Riesling and beautiful Pinot Noir, Spätburgunder, all those sorts of varieties that we really fell in love with. And the history and the heritage. And we realised then that our history and heritage is also important and more because when we left Guys in the Home to come back home, my professor, Helmut Becker, presented me with a book in German called Das Schlesische Weinland, which is all about the wine-growing regions of Silesia, where our families originally came from. So then we got that extension of our family history back in Silesia, where they originally came from. And to know that Riesling, that variety, had been grown there for centuries, and it's still grown here by our family for now, a century and a half. So it's a really interesting.
It's awesome.
Concept to think that we've relocated because of persecution, but we're living in the most beautiful country on the planet with that same culture that we can make our beautiful wines from.
So do you think that from, say, when you left to go and study, say the vintage before you left, to the vintage when you got back into the winemaking side of things with your dad, do you feel that there was a monumental shift in the wine in that short amount of time, like from before you left and what you learnt in those 2 years to when you came back?
Ironically, the vintage that we left from was 1974. It was our worst vintage on record.
So it could only go up. It could only go up.
We had so much mould and disease in the vineyard that year. The wines were horrible. So going to Germany was that was a relief. So we lived, we're just newly married. It was, almost like a 2-year honeymoon, on our own away. It was just fantastic. And Prue has been, the greatest contributor. I couldn't have been luckier. She has been just the most amazing deep thinker. She's had this sort of research focus. When we came back, she actually started working at Roseworthy, so she didn't study there, but she worked with some of the viticultural luminaries at the time, like Dr. Richard Smart, Peter Dry, Patrick Ireland. Patrick Ireland was inspired by Prue's enthusiasm, and he said, "Can I use Mount Eccleston for my Shiraz PhD?" So some of his work was done in our Mount Eccleston vineyard. And a lot of that sort of evolution happened because of that interaction of Prue being, thoroughly interested in, finding things out. How to make things better. What do we do? How do we fine tune and do all that sort of stuff?
And I watched her in the vineyard. We were going to find a vine to do some video at, and instead of looking for the vine, she was then fixing the vine, or saying we need to fix this, or she went over to the pruners to tell them we needed to do.
She's not fussy, is she?
No, but it's like it's utmost care and focus in what she believes in and what she wants to achieve, which ultimately comes out in what's in the glass.
Cares so much, and in the end, the fruit. When you've got to taste the grapes. I mean, you can't make wine if you don't know what you're looking for when you're tasting the grapes. And that's one thing that we were doing right from day one. We were out in the vineyard, we were tasting the fruit and looking at not just the sweetness and the flavour, but looking at the acidity, the tannin structure, how the flavours evolve. Riesling is a classic. It goes from these green, sour lemons into beautiful limes and florals and flower garden aromas. Then it starts to turn into honey, and you lose all those florals. So there's that perfect time to pick Riesling. With Shiraz does the same. It goes from this green, sour sort of berries into beautiful, spicy, dark berry fruit flavours, almost blackberry fruit flavours. And it starts to get jammy, so where the perfect time is to pick it. And ironically, when we look at the wines we make now, compared to the wines my dad and my uncle, who was running the Hill of Grace vineyard, we were picking pretty well at the same time. So we haven't changed, I don't think, in terms of what we see is the best flavour for making these particular wines. But I think what has happened is we've been able to put a lot more science and understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then how to manipulate it better. And they just didn't have that in those days.
The proof is in the vineyard and in the mass selection block. The proof is there. The effort you put in. Even just the effort into the booklet is mind blowing for me. That's just, this is fantastic. This is I'm keeping all the booklets, by the way, too. I'm taking them all home with me, not just my one, because something will happen to it. A kid will get it and wreck it or something. That's what happens with me. But we have got 6 wines in front of us.
They've all got your name in front of them.
So good. Good. There you go. I can have one each. Because the kids will fight over them too. We have got 6 wines in front of us.
We have.
And I feel like we should taste them, because I'm sure there's a lot of wine to get through, because I can see way more open bottles to my right, which is fantastic. We always like open bottles.
So really the naming for Henschke wines came about because Cyril made the first single vineyard wine from a neighbour's vineyard, which was called Mount Eccleston, and he wanted to recognise that wine by naming it after the vineyard. So it became his convention, and we've been doing that ever since. We like that naming convention because it pays tribute to the history. So Hill of Grace came from Gnaden Barrack. So it's a colloquial translation. Gnaden means grace, Barrack means hill. It could have just been Graceful Hill or something. But when you actually translate, it doesn't translate always literally. Sometimes there's a colloquial way of translating. So Gnädige Frau was Lady of Grace, that sort of thing. So that's how it became Hill of Grace. And when, with our premium Riesling, these are vines that my dad planted back in the 60s. We wanted to give some more emphasis to our history, So we decided we would name it after one of the most famous Henschkes in the family, who was Julius Henschke, my great uncle, who was a famous sculptor.
We had the famous sculpture at the front that we looked at after a single in 1920. I took a photo of that, so I'll put it over the top because that is incredible to think that was 105 years ago out of a single piece.
That's right.
Wow.
Single piece of sandstone.
Wow.
So this Julius is really all about the centre of Eden Valley, which has a lot of florals. It's almost like a flower garden. So when you pick that up, you smell all these pretty sort of citrus blossom, little rose petals and frangipani and all
Very
sorts
floral.
of beautiful aromas in that wine. And that's what Riesling's all about. It's about really being pretty but serious. There's a lime zest note. There's a lovely line of acidity that runs right through that wine.
I think in Australia it's an maybe not underrated, understated grape. Like, we need to drink more Riesling because it really is. I mean, you never drink a Riesling and go, oh, I hated that Riesling. Like, oh, I didn't enjoy that. Everyone always enjoys Riesling. There's a lot of Soms. You talk to a lot of Soms, and that's what's your drink of choice. I'll say Riesling.
It's the most beautiful variety.
Yeah.
It's such a food variety because it's got that lovely acidity.
And for a citrus head like me, who likes lemons, limes, and sour stuff, it's right up my alley.
And with fresh King George whiting or something like that, I mean, it's just a perfect match.
Perfect match. There you go. You heard it directly here. King George whiting and Julius Riesling. So I've got a couple we've had a couple today. We've had that, and we've had the lamb as well.
From Mount Edelston.
Yep, correct, with Manus. Yeah.
Remind me.
Get myself some lamb. So 2025.
2025.
So fresh off the bat.
The new vintage.
So what was 2025 like for Riesling?
It was a challenging vintage because we had a fairly poor set with 2025. We had a drought season, low rainfall. Summer was hot, but we had an early vintage. So the vintage actually was, as it turned out, a month earlier than Easter full moon, because of that algorithm issue with setting the date of Easter. But it was, we had 3 fruit days and a blood moon. That was when we were picking the Hill Grace wine.
Wow.
So Julius is picked about 2 weeks earlier because Riesling tends to ripen earlier. We train the Riesling, so we have a loose vertical shoot position trellis to keep the solar panels working, to get really good flavour.
Solar panels equals leaves, for those of you that have not been paying attention. And then a big jump to the museum, which is 2008, right? Wow. Big jump.
So go from this fine, young type, beautifully perfumed, zesty Riesling to an older vintage, and the museum vintage Riesling ages so beautifully. So if you can put Riesling down, in this case, it's over 15 years old. If you can put Riesling down, it just turns into almost like marmalade, lime marmalade on buttered toast. It's just almost
still carries the florals though, doesn't it? Like they're still.
And that's the advantage of the closure. So the Stilton closure value adds a wine. It keeps the florals there for longer, but you still get bottle age character building. So you get a more interesting wine because you have all those beautiful aromas.
Oh wow!
It's quite distinctive, isn't it? It's got a lot of intensity of aroma, but in that beautiful sort of marmalade, lime marmalade.
The acid drive is still so fresh too. It's still so fresh.
Bit of a lime zest, a little bit of almost dry as a bone sort of note. It's got some really interesting complexities to it, which is that tertiary character coming through.
Wow. Now, what's the plan with your children now? Obviously, we have Justine here, who's obviously an integral part of the business. But you mentioned before that your other son is the engineer who also works with you. Was the dream always to have your children follow in your footsteps?
I think when you grow up and you have kids, your dream is you hope that one of them will be interested in being involved in the winery to keep the generations moving, continuing. So I think we were quite lucky. Johan wanted to study winemaking, not initially, but then he changed to studying winemaking and viticulture. So he's a winemaker and viticulturist. He's actually living in Spain. Mm-hmm. His wife is Spanish. They have 3 gorgeous daughters, and they live in Madrid. And now at the moment he's doing a lot of our export promotional work around the world. So he's just come back from China recently. He's been in America fairly recently. Doing all that promotional work that Prue and I used to do. We used to jump on an aeroplane and fly to New York or fly to London or whatever.
Got to do it, right?
You got to do it, absolutely. If you're a winemaker, you have to.
You have to sell your product.
You have to keep on encouraging people to taste and love your wines.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
It's so nice having somebody be able to handball that to somebody like Johan to do, because he presents really well. He's got all the knowledge, and so it's great. He's got just the right. He's just the right person for doing that for the time being. So that works really well. And it's not easy. It's not an easy job when you've got a family travelling around all over the place and.
No, it's not easy. And they've got young kids too. It's just people. And I get it a lot. You live the best life. You must love your job. Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I will openly admit it on camera that I love my job, and I'm very, very fortunate. But it is also, it's really hard. I have 4 young kids. I have 7 days of sport, and I have a wife she's accommodating.
She must be a very patient girl.
She's patient, all right. Yeah, it doesn't mean she approves of everything that I do, but I think she understands the magnitude of what I'm trying to do and the legacy I would like to leave for my children. I never had wine as a kid, never. My parents never ever. No way. Rarely there would be maybe a Lambrusco if our Italian friends came over, but that was the extent of wine in my house. And my grandma had beer, but that was to wash her hair with, because she believed the old Austrian wives' tale that light beer though, not heavy beer, made your hair thicker and stay not from falling out.
Good nutrients.
I couldn't even fathom when I was a kid that she was wasting beer like that when I was a teenager. Hey, what are you doing, Grandma?
So the next one, we've paid tribute to Julius, who's a famous sculptor, and ironically, Riesling is a chiselled wine. So as it turned out,
there you go.
We didn't realise till later it was very clever to call name after Julius.
Now into the next legacy.
So the next legacy was a vineyard this wine initiated with my uncle's vineyard, which was planted by Johann Alfred Zobel. JAZ was his initials, and he was going these tiny little old bush vines of Grenache, just an acre or so, and he was going to pull them out, and I said no, let me come and have a look at it. I went and saw these old vines, a couple of leaves, a couple of bunches. They looked like driftwood on a beach. It was just unbelievable. And I said, wow, don't pull them out. We've got to make a wine from this. And he'd been selling it off really cheap to the big companies. So we ended up making the first Johann's Garden. And because I paid him decent money for it, the Barossa grapevine got around, and I had all these dear old growers turning up
offering you fruit.
Next couple of years, and Stephen, I've got this old Grenache. I've got some old Matara too. Would you like that? So I ended up with a nice resource of some really beautiful Grenache. So this is actually a blend predominantly of Grenache and some Mataro.
Yep.
So 60-40. And the 2 varieties just go together like a jigsaw puzzle piece. They are just so well suited to each other. Grenache has this beautiful, fragrant, spicy, raspberry sort of fruit, red berry fruits, and really fine, silky tannins. Mataro is inky, it's dark, plummy, it has mace, nutmeg sort of spices, it's got white pepper, it's got tough, chunky, beautiful chunky tannins, almost like dominoes. And you put the 2 together, and it's just a marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, it's like light and heavy, like mixed in into one wine that works very, very well together. Just without this, it's like a GM without the without the S, like a GSM without the S, really. Can't put any of the good Shiraz in there. You can't mix it up too much, right?
No. Well, in some vintages we did trial some Shiraz, but in the end the Grenache, the lightness of the Grenache and the spiciness of the Mataro just works so beautifully as a combination. It's a gorgeous wine. It ages well. This is a 23, so it's 2 years old.
Still so fresh.
Very cool season, but it has really pretty aromas and pretty flavours and
that's
nice lean.
Just want
really food friendly.
Really food friendly. That's like I call them a barbecue wine. Like if you're cooking a barbecue and you just want to drink something that will pair perfectly with whatever you've got going on the barbie. That's exactly what that is, and it would be just yum.
Yeah.
With a bit of warmth, not like today.
That's right.
Today we need something like really hearty and warming, and
we need more Grenache to warm up.
And so now we're going to Cainton.
Cainton.
See, I've been saying Cainton for a long time, so I think I'm just going to have to change my pronunciation.
There's a Cainton in Victoria.
Yeah, that's probably where I get it from.
Yeah, we had to go through Cainton on the way home last time we were in Victoria because everybody has names, thinks it's Cainton, but this is named after the Keynes family. So the Keynes family, K-Y-N-E-S, like the economist George Maynard Keynes. That's a family who were pastoralists. They settled here in the Eden Valley, the high country, in this North Rhine region. And they probably, they named the village first of all North Rhine, and then they wanted, like Anguston, named after Angus family. They decided to name this after the Keynes family, so it became, instead of Keynestown, it became Cainton. So you pronounce it like
Cainton.
Like Cainton.
So Cainton and Cainton, two different words. I'll remember that one.
Don't get them mixed up.
No, because I do get them mixed up, definitely. And I reckon I've definitely said it before on camera. So apologies to the Kane family.
So the Cainton euphonium came about because of the, Henschke is a bit like an extended family estate. Over the generations, more family members have planted vineyards, grown grapes to come to Papa Henschke. And now on the Papa Henschke, they bring their grapes too. So it sort of happened over time. So this
that's a great way to put it.
This is a wine that those relatives' grapes go into. So it's mostly Shiraz. It's some Cabernet as well. So it's about 60 sort of 40 Shiraz Cabernet. But in this case, it's a little bit of Cabernet Franc, a little bit of Merlot. And they just add some beautiful complexity to the wine. But that Shiraz Cabernet blend works so successfully together because Shiraz has that sort of richness and ripeness and sort of softness and roundness. Cabernet has the violets, the cassis, and those sort of fine grade tannins on the finish. So it makes the wine more food friendly to drink. So originally it was a Shiraz. Prue and I looked, as more and more Cabernet was becoming available, looked at the blend, and we really loved that blend because it just adds that savouriness to the wine to make it so much more delicious with food.
It's the ultimate Australian blend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shiraz and Cabernet. It's like the ultimate blend.
We call it the Super Barossa here in the Barossa.
Okay. I like the Super Tuscan, but the Super Barossa, I like that. I like that.
Shiraz Cabernet.
Might coin that one too. That's actually, I can get the Cabernet in there and get that on the mid to back palate, but it's a beautiful wine too.
But it's just enough to give it really lovely balance in the wine.
22 is a vintage.
22 was a great vintage.
Okay.
A really, really beautiful.
We like the 2s and we like the 6s.
Yeah, this 2 was a good one.
Yeah.
We did have a hailstorm, so in October.
Yep.
Before the end of the season, 21, we had a big hailstorm in October, the 28th, when actually one of our grandsons was born that day, young Otto. So he was hail Henschke there for a while because of the hailstorm that happened on his birthday. But we now easily remember the 22 vintage because it was an influence of that. So the crop was decimated. The vines came back surprisingly well from the October event, and we've ended up with some really beautiful wines, mainly because the rest of the season was it was a milder summer, a long slow ripening period, really beautiful, almost like an Indian summer. So you had that warmer, longer ripening period to get some really beautiful fruit. So that was picked through to May, so March.
Oh yeah, wow, like over a month. 22nd of March to the 3rd of May.
And the name went from the original Cainton estate that my dad called it. We changed it to Cainton Euphonium because we wanted to bring in the family musical history. So up there's a euphonium that my grandfather would have played. So in the booklet you've got photographs of the family brass bands. So in the top photograph, my great-grandfather, Paul Gotthard, is at the back on the left with the beautiful mutzer on their heads, and the little boy standing in front of him, probably 10 years old, playing the drums, keeping the beat for the band. That was my grandpa.
Wow.
It was amazing seeing your grandpa as a little boy, especially with such a responsibility. And then in the next generation, there he's in the middle of at the front with the white hat on, with the euphonium. He's the leader of the band.
It's amazing how all of the wines just tie back to family and to history.
Yeah, so important.
It's been so evident from the moment I stepped foot and met you at the front of the cellar door, with the plaque and the history and the family legacy, that so much of what you've done and what you're doing is directly tied back to family. Like it's a really awesome, I guess it's not the right word, I don't even know the right word that I'm looking for. It's a really comforting, and it's really nice to know that someone is so caring for family.
Yeah, I think for us, family is so important.
Yeah.
But because we've had the fortune, I guess, of having generations together, and it's lovely having grandkids because you get that same sort of experience that my grandfather must have had with me. I was probably a very naughty boy. Do you treat your grandkids better than you treated your own kids? Like you're a little bit more lenient with the grandkids, do you think? Like you're a little bit more like, you want that? Yeah, sure. Whereas, maybe Justine had to ask a little bit more for it. It's not fair to say that in front of Justine.
It's definitely fair, because I feel like we're all about honesty, right? Because I talk to my mum all the time and I'm like, what do you mean you did that for them? Like, that would never happen.
Isn't it funny? I think you have more time for your grandkids. Because when when you've got your own kids, you're just so busy with your life. You wish you'd been able to give them more time, quite often, and I think that's the difference.
Well, that's where probably the grandparent thing comes in. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
And grandparent, you don't have to worry about the moral side of it so much. I mean, if they have another plate of ice cream and with chocolate sprinkles, which you never would have let your kids have. Nah. I mean, who cares? They'll go home, they'll be fine.
Yeah, my mum always says when they're on my watch, it's my rules. And I'm like, I was on your watch for 20 years. Where were the rules for me? But no, it's a beautiful thing to know how much you put into your own family and the history of your family. Like you wrote a whole book on the family tree and the family legacy, and we drove around to Hill of Grace, to Mount Edelstone, and the explanations on where we were and where we were going and the history behind it. It was so genuine and so honest, and it's like it was ingrained in you. And I think that's a real testament to the person that you are. And
I think that's actually a fairly common thing in South Australia, because of South Australia as a mixture of English, Scottish, and German families. I think they all treasure their history. It was a free settlement, so there were no convicts here. It was just people settling and living their lives and sharing family. And COVID actually made me realise why my grandfather loved the farm so much, because they had food, they had everything for their family they needed. They didn't matter if they were isolated from everybody. And I think that's really the most precious thing about a family, is having that ability to be totally flexible and sustain your family even when times are tough.
It's very inspiring, if I do say so myself. But we are going to go on to the next one, because otherwise we'll run out of time and we'll run out of battery, and we definitely don't want that. And there's the angel. So now this is the 2022
you've actually
marble.
You've jumped
one.
Yes,
I did.
okay,
I jumped from the Tapa Pass, which is one of my personal faves.
Bring it back to Tapa Pass.
Here we go.
So the Tapa Pass is a really interesting wine. It's also grown by relatives, but on the western side of the mountain range. So I mentioned to you before about this mountain range is ancient, somewhere between 500 million and a billion years old. And during that seabed Adelaide geosyncline sort of event where the mountain range then got pushed up, that probably the shills and all the limestone, everything on the top of the seabed, as that would have settled, got pushed to the western edge. So now the western side of the range, all along there, is limestone and marble, really deep. And there's pure water in that. So it just filters rainwater down through. So it's very much almost like a Terra Rossa from the Coonawarra. This has a red loam over the top with this marble and limestone underneath. So the names for the Tapa Pass and the Marble Angel reflect that particular site. So this is a fruit that we've been getting from the family, our relatives over there on Tapa Pass for generations. On the old maps, the old historic maps of the region, the Tapa name, which is that area, it's sort of a north-facing slope going down to the North Para River by Fechner Bridge. That name on these old maps really intrigued me, Tapa, and it goes back to an indigenous name, which is related to that particular area. The word pa, so it's tapa, the word pa means water in the local indigenous Paramount language, and so we know it's got something to do with water. The Nuri Utpa is a township that nobody can pronounce.
Nuri Utpa.
Yeah,
Very close.
Utpa.
Nuri Utpa.
Yeah.
Yep. See, no good.
Yeah. That's to do with separation of water. So there's a sort of meeting place there where that name came up. So the Pa relates to this part of our Barossa region quite strongly. So I like that name Tapa because it related to that site, so we called it Tapa Pass.
It's a beautiful wine.
And the Shiraz is so different. So this isn't Shiraz growing on Mount Edelson soil or Hill of Grace soil. This has the limestone underneath, and it brings up the blue fruits in the wine. So the wine is quite fragrant. It doesn't have sage, pepper, bay leaf notes.
It's not as spicy.
No, it's quite different. Just pretty blue fruited, quite fragrant, and very, very attractive. And in 2002, I just couldn't help myself anymore. When the grapes are picked, they came in and were crushed to go into the fermenting tanks. Just the colour, the aroma, the flavour of that fruit. I said to my guys in the cellar, we're going to keep this tank separate and we'll bottle it as a separate wine. I just knew I had to do that. We'd been taking it long enough to be blended away, it had to be kept separate, and that became the first Tapa Pass. So this is actually the 20th anniversary vintage of Tapa Pass.
It's so amazing that after so much time you can literally you can look at something and smell something and say we need to keep that on its own. Like the ability to, and I mean I'm guessing that the amount of crush would have been substantial, that you would have known that, just to look at it and go, we need to keep that separate this year.
I'd been watching it for a few years, and it got to the point where 02 was such an amazing vintage. The colours were deep, such flavour intensity.
It is actually intense.
I just had to keep it separate.
I really like that wine. My wife would absolutely.
My
wife would love that wine. Oh, definitely, she would absolutely love that.
So it's got a nice history. Old vines, 70-year-old vines, low yielding, really lovely sort of concentration, texture, and balance in the wine.
I don't think there's any young vines around here. Everything I drive past and see is like tree trunks and gnarly old vines on their own, and 4 metre long. What do we have, like a 4.5 metre long one in the Mount Edelson vineyard that I measured out with my feet?
Yeah.
Crazy. We don't have that where we are, obviously, where I am.
No, but it's a lovely part of South Australia, the history, the heritage of South Australia, to have those unique vineyards dotted around the country of South Australia is fantastic.
Because I'm always honest, I will admit that Cabernet is not my favourite grape. Actually, probably one of my least favourite grapes of all. But we have the marble angel.
Don't worry, we won't tell anybody. The Marble Angel, once again, is very similar to the Tapas, but this was a 2012 experience. Another two.
It's all the twos. It's all the twos.
Where this fruit, once again, it was fruit from vines planted on this. It's sort of the foothills of the Barossa, so it's coming into the Barossa Valley, but it's all facing west. Mm-hmm. The rows run north-south, not east-west. They run north-south. And we've been thinking for a long time, why does this site, which gets the full sun in the afternoon, make such beautiful, distinctive Cabernet? You get the lovely violets, you get the lovely cassis, you get a methoxypyrazine sort of notes, which is a bit you probably don't like.
That's exactly the bit that I don't like. But it's not.
But it's very distinctive.
But it's not overpowering either in this as a young wine. Like I find that a lot of that pyrazine early on is just overpowering for the rest of the wine. As it gets older, of course, it sort of integrates. But as a young wine, it
can be quite dominant.
Yeah, and for me, that's just not my.
And I think here, because of that exposure, it's quite subtle.
Yep.
But it's complex. And on the palate, it has lovely fruits. It has beautiful fine grain tannins on the finish. I think it's. The more we talk about that vineyard, and the more we discuss how and why it has such unique flavours, it seems to be that those north-south rows actually work to an advantage, because what happens is that off of the Eden Valley you get cold air drainage, which forms katabatic winds down the front of the range, and it's a worry for balloonists in the region. They have to really watch out for those katabatic winds as they wave across the Barossa floor. So as it comes down through the vineyard, it's actually cooling the vines down, and it seems to be something that gives this Cabernet that uniqueness that you wouldn't get if you grew it in the middle of the Barossa.
It's funny, like even at the Hill of Grace vineyards, some were east to west, and then on the other side of the road they were north to south.
They're all east-west except for the church block.
Yeah.
It's quite unusual.
So really, like the knowledge to know the topography of the land, even 150 or 160 years ago, to know which way to plant.
Isn't that interesting that Nicholas Tanitsky, when he planted them over 150 years ago, 160, planted east-west.
Yeah.
But they did learn. The first winemaker in Cainton was Henry Evans, the other side of Cainton, the Evandale winery, and he actually learnt quite quickly. It's been recorded that he worked out the rotation was important, and worked out you couldn't plant vines closely together like they do in Europe, metre apart. And when he pulled out every second row, he got better quality and better quantity. Mm-hmm. So it would be to do with competition in our dirt compared to, say, Germany or France. So that was quite interesting. So the Marble Angel name came about because it's near the quarry where the marble is quarried for the angels that Julius sculptured.
Okay. So get a history back to homage back to the family.
Back to the family. So we just thought because it's close to, and it's on that dirt, it's on that tumbled down, mixed up limestone and red loam, which provides a basis for that vineyard. We thought, well, because it links in so beautifully with that limestone, the marble of that front of the range, we've got to bring something in somehow, so we named it after Julius and called it Marble Angel. And these are the angels that he sculptured out in the Hill of Grace.
And I'm going to put them all over on the overlays. Don't worry.
Yep.
Because this booklet, this is something else. I'm going to read this on the plane tonight. That's for sure. But the wines they're all incredible. And I actually have to say that my favourite out of all of them, of these six, was the Julius Riesling, the first one.
Wow.
The young Riesling. I think that's just what I want to drink. But just even now, just more florals.
Just so pretty, isn't it? It's pretty and serious at the same time.
I know there's probably a boring question that you get asked all the time. Your favourite wine, yada yada yada. But I'm going to ask you one wine-related question. All right? Mm-hmm. If you could only drink one wine that you've made personally, all right? So from any vintage of any of any vineyard, what's the wine that you would pick to drink?
What am I eating with it?
I mean,
Because
if I say land, then you're going to say it has to be Mount Edelstone because because the sheep from the Hutton Vale farm graze the Mount Edelstone vineyard, right?
Correct.
So obviously that you eat what you drink, yada yada. But I mean,
marriage made in heaven.
okay, well, you're not eating anything. You're just sitting down with Prue and you're just reminiscing about, I don't know, someone's had another baby, or Justine's about to turn 40, same as me. Yeah. Sorry that I just put through under the bus there, sorry, but so am I. All right, so you're just thinking, you're just going, all right, my daughter's about to turn 40, it's a really monumental birth year. We want to sit back and just sit out there in the courtyard and just drink something. What are you going to drink? But it has to be one that you made. It can't be something else.
You've got the glass in your hand that is my favourite variety, my favourite wine to drink, and that's the Julius.
And what vintage would you be drinking?
I love drinking young Riesling because I love those florals, but because of the closures, these days, the Stelvin closures, the wines look so beautiful with bottle age. So I would probably go back to maybe 2002 because I've still got them in my cellar. And with that age, you're really getting, when this is 08, so it's not far away, getting a beautiful complexity and intensity. But anywhere in there, I mean, there's some beautiful vintages. 2017 was one of the most glorious Riesling vintages for us because it was a really cool season. And so the wines are just so pure and so vibrant.
It's a great season for Riesling, not so great for Shiraz and Cabernet, right? Well, this has been absolutely, I mean, I haven't really said much, which for me is quite strange on camera because generally I talk a lot. But I'm truly honoured and humbled to have had the opportunity to sit down with you and taste these wines and learn about your history and passion for the region as well as for your family, which is so evident.
We had a whole bunch of family members because there were three brothers who married, who came to Australia at two together and then one later on, and they all had big families. And so all those relatives spread out, and it got to the point where South Australia had the most family history done because of the German settlers who wanted to trace back their family history. So most of the family history books were written here in sort of South Australia. And we, when we formed our committee, 10 of us, we were all so enthusiastic, but there was no computer program to punch it into at those days. So we had all these, one girl, or one of the aunts, had kept, ever since she was a little girl, had kept all the birth deaths and marriages of all the Henschke relatives for years and years. She had all that stuff, but she didn't have anything to join it all up with.
Wow.
So one of the guys was working for, I don't know, it was PMG or whatever it was back in those days, and he was basic in computing, and he actually wrote his own family history program, which he started putting it in. Then the Lutheran Publishing House had a much more sophisticated version because they were starting to do more and more family histories. So we just shoved all that into the Lutheran Publishing House program. And then it was a matter about, we don't have a family history book, but it was all a matter about collecting the stories. And fortunately, at that stage, 30 years ago, we still had enough of the older generation, now I've lost them all, but had enough of that older generation who remembered their grandparents because they're the ones, they were the first or second generation who came to Australia. So we could actually compile something like 6,000 descendants and stories on most of those early people. It's fantastic.
Wow. And just the want to do that is impressive.
Yeah.
Right? Like the actual want from yourself and the community to actually want to do that is truly remarkable.
History. I hated history at school. But
Didn't we all? Didn't we all?
When it comes to history, suddenly it becomes so fascinating.
I feel like history only becomes important to you as you get older. When you actually have history, right?
Yeah.
When you're young, you're like, history? Come on. Like, what?
Also when it has relevance.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, we had a fantastic time. We published the book. We had a big reunion down at Tanunda on the Oval. There must have been 1,000, not 1,000, but 500 at least. It was 700 people turned up. So we had all these stands for photographs of each of the family member groups, and then we started having celebrations here. So every year we'd have a Henschke picnic, and people would come here on a Sunday sometime, and we just shared the history. And my cousin Ian, we call ourselves cousins, but we're 5 generations removed. Cousin Ian, he was a radio and television journalist. So you might have heard of Ian Henschke. He was on Landline in the old days and stuff like that. Amazing guy. He's one of those typical journalists who'll never give up. Get to a dead end, he'll find a way. And he was the first to get to find the Henschke house in the village of Kuchlau by himself. So he couldn't even speak German, let alone Polish. But he just managed to find somebody who could speak a bit of English. He said, can you take me to some way or other? And I will drop you off at the railway station. He sat at the railway station for hours and hours, and somebody told him that there's no train. And he had to find somebody else to take him, and eventually found the Henschke house.
Wow.
Just amazing.
Never give up attitude, right?
Never give up.
We're gonna.
That's all. We'll get into it. It's okay, but that's all good. So that's all great stuff too. But what we have now is we have the 2021 single vineyard release. This is how we refer to this too. So this is the 5 of the premium releases, we're going to call
Single
them.
vineyard.
The single vineyard. So it's all from the 2021 vintage, which if you've been following along my Shiraz challenge or any other events, you know that the 2021 vintage here was absolutely cracking.
Yeah.
Across the board?
Yes.
For all varieties?
Yes.
There you go. You've heard it.
Sometimes you just have that.
The perfect vintage. And we're going to start with the 2021 Cyril Henschke.
And I think maybe so we don't have to do it during the tasting. We can run through the tasting. The soil profiles are really important. So we're going from Eden Valley, sort of just out of the township of Eden Valley, up on the range. So that high point, that sort of continuation of the boundary ridge. And that's where our vineyard is, in an amphitheatre facing west, and it drains into the North Para River. That Cyril bought that block back in the 60s and then started planting vineyard there. Used to be a dairy. That's on this type of soil. So the Cyril and the wheelwright come from that. And it has the bedrock below, which is all this stone, this sedimentary rock that the mountain range is formed of. And above that, it has columnar clay structure. So the clay is actually in sort of little columns that have formed up, that form this really unique clay, and the roots can get down between the columns and access water, because clay is a good water storage tank, but it doesn't release it easily. So by having access by the plant roots works really well. Above that is a sandy loam. A little bit of gravel on it, but it's mostly pretty well a classic sandy loam. So you've got a really beautiful soil for vineyard. So the Cyril and the wheelwright are on that. The other thing about it, because it's further down the range, sort of towards Adelaide Hills, the soils are slightly acidic, whereas you come back up to Mount Edison and Hill of Grace, these soils become slightly alkaline.
Okay.
So it's a change in the pH of the soil.
Which is Cabernet. 99% and 1% Merlot.
Exactly.
So in terms of tonnage, if we're looking at that as, because when people say 1%, it doesn't sound like it's a lot. But if you're making this in terms of tonnage, you're talking like it's 100 tonne of Cabernet, 10 tonne of...
No, it's not. It's not 100 tonne Cabernet.
We wish,
It's
right?
about 25 tonne.
Okay, 25 tonne. Okay.
And then would have been a tonne or so of the Merlot.
Okay. Co-fermented? Or individually and then blended?
No, individually.
Okay.
So it would have been more Merlot, but we actually we make this Cyril Henschke vineyard is on a north-facing slope on the soil, north-facing slope, so it's like a solar panel. So it gets the warmth as the season progresses, and it grows from east-west, of course, and it has Prus management underneath the vines. The Cabernet tends to be the latest ripening, so we have 25 rows of Cabernet at the top of the vineyard, 5 rows of Cabernet Franc, and 8 rows of Merlot. So it gives us the possibility to blend those varieties to suit the complexity of the wine depending on the season.
Okay.
So maybe in a cooler year we might need more Merlot to soften the wine. In a warmer year, the Cabernet is the heart and soul of the wine. And in 2021, being a really beautiful vintage, it didn't need any more Cabernet Franc or Merlot to make the wine perfect. It was already really a beautiful.
Oh, it's a beautiful one. And another one that ages very, very, very well over time. You get your hands on some old ones, they are absolutely incredible.
So this is a photograph, so you see that sort of slope with the shadows across it, and that's the rose of Cabernet.
It's awesome. All this stuff is going to be all over the video. And then we go to the wheelwright.
So I guess the Cabernet shows you the violets, the kisses.
Correct.
That was beautiful.
But not that like Porosini green, like it's just not.
No.
It's all fruit and spice and.
One thing I must say about the Cyril is the comments that I get as we travel around the world and taste back vintages of the Cyril, like a decade or whatever, people comment on how soft the tannins are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why, but that particular vineyard just produces really lovely, soft, fine-grained tannins.
It's a beautiful one.
It's not grippy at all, like most Cabernets tend to be. It doesn't have that. They're really tough tannin structure.
Wheelwright now,
Wheelwright.
100% Shiraz.
100% Shiraz from those early plantings that Cyril put in. So on your map here,
Yes.
the Wheelwright vineyard are these patches of contoured Shiraz that he planted back in the 60s. And there are 4 sort of major blocks of Shiraz from the 60s. The contours meant in those days that they were conserving moisture, so they followed the shape of the hill. Most of the rows run arguably east-west, but some will face slightly north, some will face slightly south.
As they curve around and come down.
So when it came to producing this wine, the first vintage was 2015. Before that, it was a part of our Cainton Euphonium wine. But it got to the point where 2 things happened. One, the vines were 50 years old, and we wanted to celebrate the fact that we had enough vine age there to give those wines really good structure and texture. The other was that vine age and balance is really important, and we were celebrating our 150th anniversary in 2018. We needed a celebration wine, we needed something quite unique, and it just came to me after watching this for years and years and years that we probably needed to do something really extra special with this vineyard to create the uniqueness in this wine. Scott Henry is much more challenging because the vigour, incredible vigour in that vineyard. Scott Henry is much more challenging when the rows are on contours, because as soon as you pull the wires tight, then your shoulders falls over.
Correct.
So she ended up having to rearrange the strainer posts, more strainer posts within the vineyard to be able to get the shape of the Scott Henry, so she could have a vertical shoot position trellis to get that exposure.
Always something extra you need to do.
And the volume control just enhanced the aromatics, the spice, the colour, the flavour, the balance, and the maturity.
So awesome.
And it went from being a gorgeous wine to really stunning.
It's a beautiful wine. It's another one I'd love to
How
drink.
the Wheelwright came about. And to come up with a name, we decided we should really pay tribute to the founder of Henschke, who was my direct ancestor, Johann Christian Henschke. Instead of calling it Johann Christian, we decided we would call it or name it after his occupation. And on his shipping documents, he was a stonemason and wheelwright.
Okay.
And we liked that wheelwright.
He sounds better than the stonemason, maybe.
But also it also alludes to the fact that he had amazing skills, furniture skills.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to make a buggy wheel?
No.
Exactly right. So
No.
that's when you think about it, you realise, that you're making furniture. Not only that, you're putting this red hot rim around the outside of the wheel and then shrieking it tight onto the wheel to keep the wheel focused. So I admire him to have
skills to do that.
amazing skills as a man who came to South Australia, because they were all skilled artisans. There were builders, there were architects, there were artists, there were all sorts of people, and then all the foods. Think of candlestick makers, compared to all the bakers, butchers, and
none of them hand skills these days. None of that these days.
So the wheelwright just seemed to be the appropriate name for the wine.
It's a beautiful wine.
And what I love about it is that it shows that cooler, higher, wetter, colder part of Eden Valley. It's got spice. It has some bay leaf, has some crushed flowering herbs. It's like a herb garden almost, with those beautiful red fruits.
It's lovely. They're all lovely, actually. And next is the Mount Edelston, the 21. We're just going to briefly touch over this because, as you would have seen on video now, that we were there. So I've tried this wine so many times now, and it is just unbelievably stunning right off the bat. And it's a fantastic wine, and it really does have that really spicy, fragrant, like it's really, really aromatic, but in such a beautiful way, and it's so elegant. It's so elegant. And the work in the vineyards, I can tell you, I've seen it, and I've seen Prue working in there, albeit briefly. She still was working in there while we were there. It's unfathomable to know how much effort goes into these wines, and that's something that I want to get across to you on camera, that it's not just grow some grapes, crush them, chuck them in a barrel, put them in the bottle. There is just a plethora of work that goes into the vineyard in order to make these wines that we so often just take for granted.
I call it love and attention to detail.
It's the detail. Well, just the grounds here are enough to show you the detail that goes into the wine. But the next one's the Hill of Roses. Because we've gone through that one, Hill of Roses.
So the Hill of Roses is a part of Prue's selection work.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1986, she did the selection at Mount Edelston and a selection at Hill of Grace. So they were put into their respective nurseries. The one which is in that photo, that's the post office block 3, we call it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's opposite the old post office. Post office block 1 was planted after the grandfathers, and then post office block 2 in the 50s, and then post office block 3, which is Uncle Lou's and Prue's selections. And based on vine health, selecting out the best genetics, and we realised when we came back from our studies in Germany and we looked at our old vineyards, we could see them dying from newtoper and all that sort of stuff. Well, we had to bring hygiene, really focus on hygiene in the vineyard. And people don't tend to put hygiene and vineyards in one sentence because you think hygiene are in hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really important with vines like grapevines because those pruning wounds you make can allow the fungus in, the Eutypa larva fungus, and you get dead arm disease in the vine. So Prue stopped the pruners using big saws and big snips, went down to small cuts and painting over the cuts. So we reduced the opportunity for the fungus to damage the vines.
The small things.
And then the other part of it was we knew we had unique genetics in this vineyard because they were planted so long ago. And they were planted by some of it's one of the oldest vineyards in Australia. We knew that those vines need to be preserved, and the best genetics particularly need to be preserved. And because of Prue's training at Geisenheim, another reason for having studied in Germany, she could then go through and look over the whole growing period at the time of bud burst, whether there was absence of virus, for example, time of flowering, the fruitfulness of the bunches, all of that detail right through the growing season. She put different coloured tapes around the ribbons, around the vines that she selected. And then those selections were put into the nursery to preserve for posterity. Uncle Louis did his selection. He was a grower, so he selected on vines that had lots of bunches of grapes on them, as you'd expect. Where Prue was looking for smaller berries and smaller clusters, but more flavour intensity, better balance. And the two is really interesting, that combination. They had a number of vines that were similar and a few vines that were different in the end. So they went in there, and that's what's become the Hill of Roses. So the Hill of Roses is a vineyard that was planted in 1989. In 2001 was the first, 2001 was the first vintage of the Hill of Roses. So after a number of years, from 89 through to 2001, was enough time for us to realise that these were starting to show some really interesting flavours. They weren't just showing those young vine Shiraz characters anymore. They were starting to get serious. So we made the first Hill of Roses, and we called it Hill of Roses rather than Post Office Block 3 because of the connection with the post office.
And it rolls the tongue a little bit better.
Which is from the Albert family, from the Rosenzweig family. We just like that name Rosenzweig because it means rose twig in English. And we thought, wow, why don't we call it Hill of Roses?
It's fantastic. And then the final one, which pains me to say, is Hill of Grace, which is just, standing in that vineyard was just something else.
So I think when you go from the Hill of Roses, which has some of that fire spice and these notes of Hill of Grace, but it has some other spice in, so some other sort of crushed flowering herbs and different aromas. It's not quite the purity of that sort of Asian fire spice exotic note of the Hill of Grace.
I think that they're two like side by side as well. When you smell them, you're sort of getting like, you can actually sense the younger vine, like the more brash, not more brash, but like more in your face, like on the aroma. Like it's not as refined and delicate, and the fact that these are 150 years old, right? Like it actually comes through on the nose, which sounds crazy. I know, all right. You can shoot me down if you want.
Not quite a tin whistle to a clarinet, but there's still, you see these vines are well on their way to starting to get more of that complexity and aroma profile.
And everybody, associates Hill of Grace with, special occasions and birth years and putting them down. Your dad or your grandfather put them down for decades to, drink them. If I posted a photo, which I will, of the 21 Hill of Grace on some of the forums, I guarantee you the most amount of commentary I'll get will be from older gentlemen that will say, oh, it's too young, you can't drink that, I can't believe you drunk at 21. But this is so approachable as it is. And I haven't had super old ones, I'll be honest, but I've had some older ones. But this is straight out the gate, really enjoyable to drink. It's better than enjoyable to drink. It's amazing. I love the herbal profile and like the spice, like the sagey.
Yeah. It's really lovely spice.
Yeah.
Really exotic, really aromatic.
Yeah, it's really, really aromatic.
Lovely dark fruits, blue and black dark fruits, and quite complex.
It was a shame to spit it out.
Compared to the Mount Edelson, it's just got that next level of richer sort of complexity, which is, I think, is due to the orientation. Mount Edelson gets the easterly sun, not the hot afternoon sun, so it's really fragrant and pretty and elegant. Hill of Grace gets more of the late afternoon western sun, and it's got that extra bit.
So those solar panels grab a bit more light and really. Yeah. I don't know where to start here, but obviously, extremely thankful to Stephen, to Prue, to Justine for organising this. She's hiding still behind the camera, but we are thanking her greatly for organising this. It's truly something that I'm really honoured to be able to do. It's not a big deal to jump on a plane and fly. It's really not, but it is a big deal to me personally to be able to do these sorts of things. It's what I want to do. I want to showcase wineries and family, because that's oh so important to me. So a massive thank you to you especially for your time. And there's a lot more reviews on these wines and facts and info to come. So from me and Stephen, thank you. And the Wine Animal is out.